5 terrifying true horror stories you were never supposed to hear. Some stories are so chilling, so disturbing, they blur the line between fact and nightmare. These aren't urban legends. These aren't just ghost stories whispered around campfires. These events really happened. And the deeper you dig, the darker they become. Tonight, we're unlocking the doors to 5 of the most terrifying true horror stories from around the world. But be warned, what you're about to hear may stay with you long after the video ends. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let the horror begin. The Silent Room at the Cecil Hotel, a true horror story you were never meant to hear. Some places hold secrets. Others trap them inside. But there's one building in Los Angeles where the walls do more than whisper, they remember. They bleed. You've heard the name before. The Cecil Hotel. It was built in 1924. A symbol of luxury. 700 rooms, a grand lobby, stained glass windows, a monument to prosperity in the roaring 20s. But the moment its doors opened, something moved in. Guests came for business. For tourism. For fame. Many never checked out. What you're about to hear is not fiction. It's not legend. It is the story of one room in the Cecil Hotel. A room so disturbing, it was sealed, not for repairs, not for safety, but because what happened there could never be allowed to happen again. They don't include it on the website. You won't see it in renovation blueprints. Room 1436. In 1947, a woman checked in. Alone. Pale, gloved hands. No luggage. Her name, she said, was Teresa L. No address. No emergency contact. Just a nervous smile and a request for privacy. She stayed 3 nights. On the 4th morning, housekeeping found the door locked from the inside. No answer. No sound. Just silence. When the manager opened it, they found her. Teresa was in the bathtub. The water was still running, pooling onto the floor. Her body lay submerged, wrists cleanly sliced, but not a drop of blood in the water. None on the floor. On the bedside table, one line written in red lipstick on the wallpaper. He watches. He waits. But he was never found. No fingerprints. No signs of forced entry. The window was locked from the inside. The police called it suicide. But the staff knew better. Lights in the room would flicker randomly. Phones would ring in the night. One guest swore he heard breathing behind the mirror. Another left screaming at 3:12 a.m., barefoot, shaking, saying a voice had whispered to him from the closet. "You're not alone." They cleaned the room. Painted it. Tried to move on. But something was wrong. Even other rooms on the floor began acting strange. The hotel quietly sealed 1436. Bolted it shut. Removed the room number. They told guests it was under repair. But no work was ever done. The hotel kept going. But the darkness spread. By the 1960s, newspapers started calling it the Suicide Hotel. Jumpers leapt from upper floors. Guests overdosed in their beds. One man was found hung from the shower rod in his bathroom, with no rope and no way to explain how. In the 1980s, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, checked in. He returned from his killings in the middle of the night, covered in blood, tossing his clothes in the dumpster out back. He'd stroll through the lobby in nothing but underwear. No one blinked. Later, in the 1990s, another killer, Jack Unterweger, came. He posed as a journalist. Interviewed LAPD detectives. Then strangled 3 women during his stay, with their own bras. Evil didn't visit the Cecil. It lived there. And then came Elisa Lam. In 2013, Elisa, a 21-year-old Canadian student, traveled solo to California. She checked into the Cecil, unaware of its past. She posted Tumblr updates, shared photos, wandered the city, until she vanished. Security footage caught her last moments. In the elevator, she steps in, presses multiple buttons, hides in the corner, peeks into the hallway, talks to someone, but no one is there. Then she steps out and disappears. For 19 days, police searched. And then guests began complaining. The water pressure was low. The water was dark. It tasted wrong. A maintenance worker checked the rooftop tanks. Inside one, he found Elisa, naked, face up, her clothes floating beside her. The tank was closed. There was no ladder. No alarm was triggered. No fingerprints. Her death was ruled accidental drowning. But no one could explain how she got in. No one ever has. A year later, a ghost hunter snuck into the hotel with a camera. He was looking for one room, 1436. He found the hallway. Found the door. It was chained shut. Bolted. Covered in rust. He pressed his ear to it. His footage begins to flicker. There's audio distortion. And then, something whispers. She's still here. The video cuts out. He never uploaded again. Today, the Cecil is rebranded. New signs. New lobby. They call it Stay on Main. But the structure is the same. The pipes. The halls. The elevator. And room 1436. Still sealed. Some say water still drips behind the door. Some say a light turns on inside, even though the electricity was cut years ago. And a few people swear they've seen a woman staring from the window. Wearing gloves. Smiling softly. Waiting. Maybe it's all just stories. Maybe it's just a cursed building in a cursed city. Or maybe, some places trap pain like a sponge. And over time, the walls drink too much. Would you stay the night? Would you dare try the door? Room 1436 is waiting. And it's never empty. The watcher in the field. In a quiet farming town surrounded by golden wheat fields, lived a 17-year-old girl named Emily. She was quiet, intelligent, and often found herself drawn to the open skies and vast fields behind her family's barn. The area was peaceful, and locals were used to the rhythm of rural life: plant, harvest, pray, repeat. One crisp October evening, Emily noticed something strange while walking home from her best friend's house. As she passed the tall cornfield beside the barn, she spotted a figure standing completely still, too still, half hidden between the stalks. She called out, thinking it was her brother playing a joke. No answer. She walked faster, unease settling in her stomach. The figure didn't follow, but it didn't vanish either. It just stood there. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She stared out her window toward the fields. Moonlight illuminated a small patch just beyond the barn, and there he was again. Same spot. Unmoving. A tall shadow with what looked like a hat, or was it horns? She blinked. He was gone. The next morning, Emily asked her brother if he was out there. He hadn't left the house. Her parents laughed it off, telling her she had an overactive imagination. The sightings continued every evening. Always around dusk. Always in the same part of the field. Once, she tried to sneak out with her phone to snap a picture, but when she lifted the camera, it glitched and shut off completely. Then the dream started. Emily began seeing him in her sleep. Standing in the fields, closer each time. She could hear whispers, unintelligible, like a static radio signal. She would wake up sweating, hearing tapping on her window. But when she looked, there was nothing. No wind. No trees. Just silence. One night, she woke up at exactly 3:33 a.m. The clock blinked red, casting a dull glow in her room. Her body was frozen. Not in fear, but in paralysis. She couldn't move or speak, just watch. And through the window, moonlight revealing only a silhouette, he stood inches from the glass, staring in. She blacked out. In the morning, she told her parents everything. Her dad grabbed a shotgun and stormed outside, only to find nothing, no footprints, no sign of disturbance. The corn was still. Too still. That was the last night Emily would stay in that room. They called in a priest, thinking it might be spiritual. He blessed the house, sprinkled holy water around the property, and told them, something doesn't want to be seen, but it's already been invited. The next day, Emily's friend Rachel came over. They decided to explore the field and confront whatever was out there. With a GoPro strapped to her head and her phone flashlight in hand, Emily stepped between the cornstalks. At first, nothing. Just rustling leaves and the smell of damp soil. Then they found it. A small clearing in the middle of the cornfield. Burnt stalks arranged in a perfect circle. In the center, a mound of dirt, freshly turned. Emily approached, her breath catching. On top of the mound was a porcelain doll, cracked, eyeless, and dressed in a dress that looked eerily similar to one she wore as a child. Rachel screamed. From behind them, a snap. They turned. Nothing. Another snap. Closer. The camera shook as Emily spun around wildly. The GoPro footage later revealed a shadow darting between the corn, impossibly fast. They ran. Rachel tripped, letting out a scream as something cold grabbed her ankle. Emily turned and pulled her up, and they bolted toward the house, corn scratching their faces and arms. Once inside, they locked the doors, sobbing. That night, the field burned. No one confessed. No signs of arson. Just a blazing fire that lasted until dawn. Firefighters claimed it was lightning. That every drowning is a cry for remembrance. Whether spirit, curse, or something else, Lake Lanier takes people. Year after year. Summer after summer. Some are recovered. Some are not. But almost all of them, just before they vanish, say the same thing. They felt something. Watching them. Calling them. Pulling them beneath the surface. So if you ever visit Lake Lanier, and you see a woman on the bridge in a blue dress, soaking wet and barefoot, don't stop. Don't speak. And whatever you do, don't look her in the eyes. The girl in the basement. In a quiet, suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the Johnsons moved into a 2-story brick home with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a basement that hadn't been touched in years. It came at a suspiciously good price, but they needed a fresh start after losing their youngest daughter in a tragic accident. The house was old, creaky, but beautiful. A place with history. The first few weeks went by smoothly. Laughter filled the halls again. The parents, Mark and Susan, began to smile more. Their 12-year-old son Jake, who had been withdrawn since the accident, started playing in the yard again. But the basement door was always locked. They assumed it was just storage space, sealed for safety. Until one rainy night, Jake asked his mother something that froze her. "Who's the girl in the basement?" Susan stared at him. "What girl?" Jake shrugged. The one who waves at me when I go past the door. She has long black hair, but no eyes. The door had no windows. No cracks. It had been locked since day one. Later that night, Susan and Mark tried the handle again. Still locked. Jake began acting strange. He stopped eating. Started whispering to himself. Said she talked to him through the vents. She says she's cold. She says the dark is loud. Then things began moving around the house. Clock stopped at 2:47 a.m. every night. Light bulbs burst. Jake's toys moved on their own. The dog refused to go near the basement. Susan found herself waking up at the exact same time each night, 2:47, always hearing scratching coming from beneath the floorboards. Then the dreams came. A little girl standing in a dark, wet room, surrounded by chains. Whispering. She took my eyes, so I took hers. Susan had the same dream. Every night. One day, Mark finally decided to break the basement lock open with a crowbar. The moment it cracked, cold air rushed out like a tomb being opened. The staircase descended into pitch black. Dust. Mold. Silence. The flashlight flickered. At the bottom of the stairs, written in red crayon across the concrete wall. I'm not alone. In the far corner, a child's mattress. Torn. Damp. And a pile of stuffed animals. All decapitated. They called the police. The officers didn't find anything criminal, just an old, sealed-off room with signs of decay and, possibly squatting. But Susan found something the cops missed. Tucked behind a loose brick, a diary. A child's diary. The name on the inside cover. Emily Hargrove, 1987. The pages were frantic. Drawings of a girl. Eyes scratched out. Notes that made no sense. Mom says don't go down there. She lives under my bed now. She says I'll see better without them. The final entry read. It hurts to see. It hurts to scream. It hurts to live. So I'll stay quiet. In the dark. With her. Jake started wearing a blindfold. He said it helped the girl sleep. That night, Susan found muddy footprints leading from the basement all the way to Jake's room. On the walls, smeared words written in something thick and brown. Now she sees through him. Jake wasn't Jake anymore. He stopped responding to his name. Started drawing spirals on the walls. He called himself We. He said, we see everything. An exorcist was called. He didn't make it past the front porch. Mark took Jake and drove far away. To his sister's home, hours away. Just to get space. But the car crashed. No other vehicle involved. Mark died instantly. Jake survived that he wasn't even scratched. He told the doctors. She told me to close his eyes forever. The house has been abandoned since 1998. Locals say if you walk past it at night, you'll hear a child whispering from the broken basement window. Don't open your eyes. She hates it when you stare. The silent ones of Briar Hollow. No one lives in Briar Hollow anymore. Tucked between two ridges deep in the Appalachian Range, the town vanished from maps in 1973 after the last 5 families disappeared without a trace. The homes remain, decaying and silent, but something still walks the woods at night. College student Rachel Foster had heard rumors online, urban legends, conspiracy threads, blurry photos of moss-covered houses and strange stick figures hanging in the trees. As part of her anthropology thesis, she decided to investigate. Alone. She arrived in mid-October, the trees painted in crimson and gold. Her car could only go so far before the road vanished under fallen branches. The rest she hiked. The first sign of trouble was the silence. No birds. No rustling leaves. No wind. Just the crunch of her boots, echoing too loud in the emptiness. She found the town behind a curtain of overgrowth. Collapsed porches. Shattered windows. Empty rocking chairs. Dozens of homes, still filled with furniture and clothes, but no people. She set up camp in the old schoolhouse. The blackboard still had faded chalk writing. Quiet is safe. No sound. No eyes. That night, she heard whispers in the woods. Gentle. Repetitive. Shoo, itch. She wrote it off as wind. Or maybe an animal. But in the morning, a circle of twigs surrounded her tent, perfectly arranged. No tracks. Just symbols she didn't recognize. She explored the town the next day and found photos, in an old church office, faded and weather-stained. Families. Children. Smiling. Except every face had been scratched out. In one photo, a child stood apart from the others. Not scratched. Just wrong. Too tall. No eyes. Lips stitched shut. That night, the whispers got closer. Rachel stayed silent. Something brushed her tent. She didn't sleep. The next day, she found a journal in the mayor's house, dated 1971. It described strange behavior, children going mute, animals vanishing, townsfolk hearing voices when no one was around. Then came the carvings. On trees. On homes. On skin. Be still. Be blind. Be silent. The mayor wrote one last entry before the ink turned to frantic scratches. They come for sound. They listen for breath. They hear everything. Rachel packed up to leave. But her trail was gone. The path she used to enter the valley no longer existed. Trees too thick to walk through. She wandered for hours but always returned to the center of town. And each time she returned, something had changed. A doll appeared on a porch, staring at her. A rocking chair moved slowly, creaking. The church bell, long rusted, rang once at dusk. Then came the voices. Not whispers anymore, chanting. Low. Unified. Repeating one word in a language she didn't know. And in the dark, they stood at the tree lean. Tall, thin silhouettes with no eyes, heads tilted, lips sealed. Rachel locked herself inside the schoolhouse and stopped making sound. No phone signal. No help. No one knew she was here. The last video on her camera showed her eyes wide with fear, shaking, whispering into the lens. They punish noise. I screamed when I fell. I heard them come. They were behind me. Please. If you find this, don't speak. Don't cry. Don't even breathe loud. They are the silence. And they are listening. The footage ends with a creak. Then static. Her body was never found. But her tent, her bag, and her camera were discovered by a pair of hikers 3 years later, untouched, but cold to the touch. Locals still say if you stand in the hollow at sunset and speak above a whisper, the air changes. The wind stops. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear breathing. Just behind your ear. The girl in the water tower. The asylum had been closed for decades. Penhas State School was known for cruelty. Electroshock, isolation rooms, inhumane experiments on mentally ill children. It was shut down in the late 1980s, but rumors said some staff stayed behind, unwilling to let go. Trevor James didn't care about ghost stories. He was a YouTuber hunting viral content. 1 million views was worth a little trespassing. The building loomed over the trees, rusted gates twisted open, ivy crawling up brick walls like veins. Birds refused to fly overhead. The place felt dead. Too dead. He brought 2 friends and headlamps. They started filming in the old patient wards, laughing at overturned gurneys, mocking the graffiti scrawled across the peeling walls. "Help me. She still floats." Then they heard water dripping. Strange, the pipes hadn't worked in decades. Yet the sound grew louder. It led them to the central tower, an old water tank perched above the facility. They climbed the iron stairs. The door to the tank was rusted shut, but not locked. Trevor pried it open. Inside was a ladder that went straight up into blackness. He aimed his flashlight. Something moved. Fast. Pale. Slippery. Then it was gone. He laughed it off, but his friends didn't. One refused to go further and left. The other followed Trevor inside. The tank was massive, hollow and round, echoes bouncing everywhere. Trevor's friend slipped on the wet metal and screamed. The sound echoed, but something else screamed back. It wasn't human. They froze. In the beam of Trevor's flashlight, a girl appeared, floating in the air, soaked in black water, limbs bent the wrong way, mouth wide open but not making a sound. Then she dropped to the floor. No splash. No thud. Just silence. Trevor ran. His friend didn't make it. He made it back to the main hall, panting, shaking. Doors that were open before were now shut. Padlocked. The walls dripped with water that hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. He tried to call for help. No signal. His phone flickered, then died. In the silence, he heard a song. A girl humming. He turned. She was at the end of the hallway. Sopping wet. Eyes pure black. Floating a few inches above the floor. She opened her mouth, and water gushed out. He blacked out. Trevor woke up the next morning outside the asylum, lying in the mud, coughing up water. Alone. His camera footage was corrupted, except for one clip, blurry, distorted, but clear enough to see the girl standing in the water tank, staring at the camera. Her mouth didn't move. But on the audio, a child's voice whispered, "He drowned me, now I'm never alone." The police found no trace of his friend. Just an open water tank. And footprints leading inside. They never came out.